How's it going, everybody? Hey, Doug. How are you? Let's see. 10 a.m. time to draw and chat with none other than Erik and the mountain scenery. Yeah, I might switch over to that. I got a request from somebody to draw large cracks in the ground. So just to mix it up, I was gonna play around, sketch some of that out. And then if it turns out, I'll make a real tutorial on it. But normally I start out, I don't really draw too many large cracks in the ground. So normally I start out just sort of sketching it and see how things come together and what I kind of learned. So that's the plan. I'm going to play around with that, see what I come up with. And then if it's all good, I'll make a real tutorial on it. Or maybe I'll just keep the live up if it really turns out well. So right now I'm just sort of roughly sketching in a crack of some kind. I don't want to go that way. But yeah, normally like when I get requests from things, Mr. John, hey, Mr. John, how are you? Whoops, looks like I missed something here. Yeah, normally when I get a request, oftentimes I don't draw them super often, so part of it is just sort of figuring out myself. And I like to find little shortcuts, especially on building the texture and stuff like that. So we'll see what happens with a large crack. I think it's going to be similar to if you've watched my canyons tutorial. It's similar to that, or a few weeks ago I did a glacier crevasse drawing, and just was fooling around with that on one of these lives, and it might be somewhat similar to that. So this probably doesn't look like much right now. This is supposed to be a crack in the earth here. So we'll have our sun going this way, or our light going that way. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. Normally I have a taped down pad or something, so it's a little loose with the sketchbook here. Okay, so this is our crack in the ground. Like somewhere out here is probably our horizon line, right? And so then, where all these little bumps and ridges are, that's where I want sort of like the earth to fall in on itself on both sides. So I'm just roughing these in at this point, kind of like from foreground going back. That way these are all, when I drop these lines in, they're going to be in front. You can have them go straight down or however you want, but here, of course, we're looking at it. We're not going to see anything coming down here. It's going to be on this side again. That's kind of a bad one, but we'll fix that later. Yeah, so normally this is kind of like my routine. I'll just go, like on the tornado one, I'd never drawn a tornado. So I was just playing around and try to figure out little tricks. Of course, look at a lot of Google images of tornadoes and see what I come up with. Let's have this one end right there. So again, on this side, there might be a little one right here. We're not going to see the walls going in on this side because, our perspective wouldn't show that. If anybody else has a request, feel free to drop it in the comments or write it here. Maybe I'll play around with it on a live like this before making a real tutorial. But hopefully on this large cracks, hopefully I figure some things out to make it a nice, easy process with little tricks. And then post it back. So here again, here it flips. So now this is falling into our large crack here. So now on this side again, this shows, and over here it doesn't show. We'll do a little shading on this in a second. Normally I focus on where these little points are, because those are easy. Back here, I want to give it some sort of definition. I don't really have those. And of course, this is probably like rock or dirt of some kind. So as I continue on, I'll probably fill in little details in here, but just trying to get sort of a foundation set here. And as we get into the distance, these are going to get sort of closer together as our perspective. We're not going to catch all those details. Things get smaller here as we go to our horizon line. Just throw it in like that. Yeah, so that sort of looks decent. There are a couple little, this line I'm not really happy with, so I'm just going to revise that here. What's everybody drawing these days? Okay, so I'm going to start with some shadows or some shading. So again, my sun's coming from this direction. So this side is all going to be in a lot more shadows. This side's going to get a lot more light. But of course, if we're falling into sort of a pit here or a crack, down towards the bottom, it's also going to get darker on both sides. I'm just going to start out kind of light here as I rough this in with a 2B pencil. Yeah, we'll start with that. We'll start with that and see where we go. So again, this side, especially towards the bottom here, just going to start filling in some shadows and see how I feel as things go. I want some, let's see if I can show it here. It's a little hard. But so where this, I don't know what you call it, where this sort of part of the crack falls down, I want that to be in a little more highlight. And then here where it's tucking in, we're going to get more shadow on that. That will define a little bit of this part of the rock sort of jutting out. I have a tendency to draw too small, which I probably did here because I can't quite get in there, but that's what you sketch. That's why you sketch these things out. Then when I do the tutorial, I can make sure I draw it a little bigger, but we're gonna make it work. And, I'm gonna go in, I may have started shading a little too early, but I don't want just all vertical lines going here because it's a little flat. I mean, if you're doing a kind of a simple drawing, that could work, but, like rocks have all those different faces to them, and I want to get some of that stuff in. And I'm going to just, again, just figuring it out because I don't draw these very often. Starting to take shape a little bit. Again, on this side, so all the top side of our little cliff edge here, that's going to get some light, but still down here in sort of the depths of our crack, down here at the bottom of the crack, I want to still have some deeper shadows here, and that will again contrast where our edge here, the edge of this side comes down, and there's also going to be some reflective light bouncing on this side, giving it a little bit of, lighter values here. Just getting a little softer here as I go into the distance again. Everything's going to lose quite a bit of detail. You just want things to be nice and organic and natural feeling. Yeah, so that's decent. And these front, even though the sun might be hitting right here, this part of our crack is pretty narrow. So it's gonna sort of shade itself. So I'm gonna put just a little bit up here. Starting to take shape a little bit. Okay, let's get into a little bit more interesting sort of shapes and see how this turns out. Just adding some rock texture. Being pretty loose here. I've just been working with a 2B pencil. It's kind of my go-to value when I draw things. It's kind of right in the middle. I mean, if I'm sketching out something, I'll go pretty light, like a HB or sometimes a 4H, but just want to add some rock texture. And again, this is going to allow for more opportunities to have some better shading down here. Yeah, I'll have to look up. Is the person who put in the request for drawing large cracks in the ground, are they on here? They might not be. Erik, I somewhat finished the bridge scene to a point, gave up. Did that tornado, but mine is a fire tornado. Seen here in California woodlands fires. I'll send them later. Yeah, cool. So I'm curious to see them, Doug. Did you see my reply on that bear photo you sent? I'd be interested in drawing that. But if it's I prefer if like you either own the photo or you know the person who owns the photo. If you saw my reply, I've had people do that where they just take my photos, which, that's kind of the way things are these days, but I'd rather not do that to somebody else. So just shading in this other side a little bit. Again, the way you're going to show the difference between these two sides here is with the contrast, and the top over here is going to be, all this is going to be getting our, can't see it, here's the direction of the light right here. These are all going to be getting a little bit of that light. Just very subtle shadows on this side. But where this sort of edge pops out into the light, it's going to be a little nook back here. That's what these lines are for, kind of where the rock is bending in on itself. So I don't want it to just be all highlight here. And of course, if we have little, I don't know, I'm just sort of roughing in little rocky type of lines here. Because if we're going into the earth here, it's going to, you know, have all sorts of stuff down there. Yeah, this is normally how I start figuring out how to draw stuff. I just play around. It's interesting to do it on a live, because I feel like I can't make a mistake, but truth is I'm going to. And whatever adjustments I need to make, I'll do it for the final video. Don't be afraid to make mistakes when you draw. That's part of it. You learn a lot that way. All right, I'm going to make just some little bits to make our hole in the ground here more interesting. Little pieces coming off. So it's not just sort of like this perfect open space. There's all sorts of little, I don't know, offshoots of it. Of course, you know, again, thinking of the perspective and the plane we're on here, these are going to mostly be going horizontally here. You can have some going vertically, like obviously like this is more vertical, but it's kind of like, you know, you're drawing. You want to just keep perspective in mind here. These are all starting to look a little bit the same, which I don't want to do. All these little offshoots. Let's have some bigger ones. Okay, I'm back. Had company. Okay. I don't know if you heard what I replied to your comment. Yeah, I look forward to seeing your tornado image. But that bear image you sent, I don't know if you saw my reply about if you own the, I was just wondering if you took that bear photo, or if you know the person who did. Because it'd be cool to draw it. I just, I don't want to draw it if it's just some random person's photo, because I don't want to steal sort of their work. Be careful of contrast here. Work on the contrast between your two sides of your crevice. I'm kind of just constantly thinking about the sun hitting this side. So this is light and this is shadow, but then also going into the depths here, that's where the shadows are also going to be created. Just kind of going slowly, incrementally, so I don't overdo it. Let's throw some tiny little things here. Perspective, you know, it's going to get a little bit hazy often, so these lines I'm not even making like super sharp. It's almost just like I'm dabbing. Because again, like if you have atmospheric haze or just those sort of foggy details. It's not looking too bad. But if you do go overboard on your shading and creating these different sort of layers and depth here, we can erase it back. If you have like one of these erasers or one of these are kind of my go-to. You can be super subtle with them and you can be pretty accurate. If you really go overboard, you can use an electric eraser, but that's going to be a lot harder to control in this situation. You see, it's got a light. I'm going to go pretty small. This is a 4H pencil. Up towards the top, you're going to get some sort of residual light, and a lot of it is kind of going to be reflected off this side back to this side. But I want to give this a little, don't want it to be in full highlight. Why does the left side look like it's laying down? Why does the left side look like it's laying down? I guess, I don't know. Because let me see. I mean, I think maybe it's just, I had these walls of the crack curve in too much. You know, we could slowly adjust that. The far left side end. I guess I'm not quite sure what you're seeing, Doug. The far, like down here? The far left side end. Over here? I don't know. But Doug, yeah, you mentioned you were gone. So like, this is also, so somebody put in a request for this up here. This is just trailing off into our distance here. So like, you know, let's just, this crack, think of this as kind of, I don't have anything to give it scale, but this is our horizon line. My idea here is this is trailing off almost so to like the vanishing point. And so that's why like my vertical lines here get smaller and smaller until they just sort of disappear because they're getting lost in the distance. Does that answer your question? No, the bottom. Loved your last work with the big forest. A lot of work. Thanks, Kent. Yeah, that was my original plan for today. I just thought people might be getting tired of it. So I'm just sort of working through my process here on this request for how to draw cracks in the ground. But if people are still interested in that, I can switch over. I mean, I think I kind of have my process for this. I mean, the last thing I would do, which I do in almost every drawing, is just give this context where, you know, a lot of times you'll get little grass growing in these cracks because that's where the water settles. Add some trees, give it perspective, give this more of the full scene because, of course, you know, that's going to make all of these details come to life a little bit more. You know, speaking of perspective, you know, if I put a tree way out here, it's going to give our scale a little bit more sense of scale. If I have like a big oak tree out here that I just throw in, but it's kind of small. Get some nice roots going down here. But yeah, this is kind of how I learn on a lot of these requests. Because if you've seen like the big forest drawing, normally when I do work on a project, it's like months and months. But since I've been on YouTube, I've been focusing a lot more on these requests and learning to draw a lot of things that I don't normally draw. At the 22 cracks going left. At the 2 cracks going left. Right here. I mean, Doug, if it might just be a bad line drawn. Some of these, I'm just sort of loosely, right here. Doesn't matter. I mean, this is just playing around, so I'm not too concerned. I'm just trying to give the scale of like, you know, here's the earth coming off, and then obviously up front here, the earth's going this way, you know what I'm saying? But whatever you're seeing, it's probably just a bad line. You know? This is just sort of giving that, if you're familiar with photography, it's sort of like leading lines, right? I may have just unintentionally did that, and maybe it's just, you know, not translating for you. But again, this is just playing around sketching. Three to 5 hours. Yeah, I mean, you know, to each their own. It all depends on what your goal is, you know. It's kind of one of my problems is like I'll get caught up in details too much. And so like every drawing turns into a large project, which is kind of a struggle on some of the tutorials because it's like I get into explaining every detail. And it's like, hey, I just wanted to know how to draw a tree or something like that. Remember who you're talking? Yes. Yeah, I gotta remember that, Doug. I gotta remember that. Just throwing grass down here, you know. You just sort of fill your scene out however you want. Here also, it's going to get a lot more. We're up in the foreground. You know, you can have lines travel in almost any direction as you go out into the distance and that horizon flattens. Most of these are going to be horizontal. You're not going to get as many, unless it's a really large crack, like our main one here. Bebo, I am Indian. Okay. Thanks for joining, Bebo. What are you drawing these days? Hey, Custo, how's it going? I've seen a few big ones. Yes. Every time I say it, like going down in the crack here, it just always feels a little funny. Yeah, so, you know, up here you have a tree that I just sort of roughed in. I don't want to take the time to draw a big tree up here, but just imagine, you know, you have some big tree up here to give us that full perspective. It's kind of like a deserty looking scene. You probably have like those roots growing up over the ground. Wow, which lead side are this is 0.5 millimeter lead. I'm not sure, Bebo and Custo, when you guys, or when you joined. I'm just sort of playing around for a request here, so this isn't like my finest work. It's more figuring out my lines and shapes and how to draw cracks and crevices. Which lead size? Yes. Yeah, 2B 0.5 millimeter lead. This tree's probably a little too big, but you know, just trying to give it that perspective of how far away, how big this crack is going into the distance. I like these techniques for separate environment elements. Yeah, a lot of these, like, you know, giving your landscapes, you know, context, but also like you think about, oh, I want to draw this big sort of canyon or crack in the ground. All these little things, all these little details that you might not think about. Okay, so you have these little cracks that come off of your main sort of canyon here, but then also remember the water. The water is going to travel down this, so there's going to be a lot of growth coming out of these things, and you may not, you know, think like, you got to think about how they will actually be in nature, which is tricky in itself. That's why reference images help a lot. Lately, I've been working out how to do water with waves with a 3D look. Water is tough. I did a waves tutorial a couple months ago. I was starting to do a rapids one, but I was struggling on how to make it shorter than like 4 hours. So I'm still working on it. That's going to come in the future. But I had to take a break because I had like the tornado request come in, the lightning, and then this one. So rather than just figure out how to condense my rapids one, I just jumped to those. But I'm going to circle back to it. Yeah, it's called How to Draw Waves in Water. I think it's from like March. But it's tough. And I think with water in particular, you got to think about being loose with it and sort of capturing the energy of the water, which is hard. I mean, I tried to demonstrate in a video, but yeah, I show you talking, Kent, are you talking about like how to get a whitewater effect in there? What I find handy is using an electric eraser for that. You know, like if you have, this is gonna be quick. But you know, if you have your like wave curl over, this probably isn't gonna do it justice. It's probably gonna be better just to watch the tutorial, but you know, like, I need a base layer there. That's not good. Yeah, watch the tutorial. I show like the wave curling over on itself and then putting the white water on the top as it's crashing over. I don't really have any drawing falling onto rocks, I don't think. But there's a few spots where I put white water on top of the wave. Yeah. Yeah, let me know what you think about it, Kent. That was also a tutorial that took me, you know, a bit to figure out how to condense it and also have like usable tips, which again, with the rapids one, that's where I'm thinking like, I don't know how to, besides like a 2-hour tutorial, I'm not sure I can condense that down, but we'll see. I'm also working on a drawing outside series, which I'm really excited about because it's something I haven't done a lot of, but you know, when it's summer, I like drawing, but when it's summer, I want to be outside. So I thought, you know, in order to keep the channel going, stick around. Erik is a good teach. Thanks, Doug. Yeah, I'm trying. what I think, and I get some comments on it. See how this part of this little, I'm just doodling this tree here as I sort of ramble. But somebody commented the other day on one of my videos how they like my tutorials, but they can't draw it as good as me. And I don't, while I like to share my tips, I feel like what I hope people take from them is, from my tutorials, is like, take what works for you, but then develop your own, take whatever lessons you get from me, but then develop that into your own style. Because, instead of trying to draw like me, figure out what works for you and develop it that way. And if I can help guide that in some way, or really being a jumping off point for you to figure out a way that you really like to do, that would be what I think would be to the biggest benefit. Stick around here because you teach. Even though we butt heads. We butt heads? Yeah, I've been subbed for 2 or 3 weeks picking stuff up. Thanks for subbing. I'm hoping, the main goal at some point would be to really sort of like be on here every day in some fashion. My work currently just doesn't allow for it. My day job, I should say. It's just too busy. I work on TV shows during my day job, which has been really busy lately. So, but ideally, like I was thinking, if it ever came down to it, I would love to do like either lives every day or obviously more tutorials. It's just hard to find time to record and edit and post and get all that good stuff up. I used to, well, I still do. I used to do more though. This channel's kind of developed into all pencil drawing, but I've done quite a bit of pen and ink. Are you talking like micron pens, Kent? Nope, dip pens. Oh, okay. I've played around with that a little bit. But not too much. Apparently this tree is going to be dead here. That way I don't gotta draw all the leaves. I use a fine liner here and there. If you go back to like my first couple videos on here, I do some work with micron pens on a larger project. It's not a tutorial, it's just a time lapse. But it's pen work, and it's sort of combining drawing and writing and painting. I also like mixing ink with water for painting tones, kind of like watercolor. Yeah, if you have, check out the Waves and Water video, then go way back to like some of my first videos on here. They're like big animal paintings, and that's like watercolor, ink, and some drawing, stuff like that. Yeah, watercolors are fun. I'm hoping at some point to bring some of that stuff on here, but just keeping with the drawing at this point. There's some super rough bark. It's being loose, but you can see all the, just trying to build texture with that. Two Cats, One Comedy, thanks for sharing your knowledge. You wrote me a very nice feedback to a comment to your videos. Love drawing and will proceed. Must take care of children. Yeah, thanks I remember the comment. I don't know if you were on a few minutes ago, but I was just saying, yeah, I think one of the things one of my goals is to share what I know and what can help people, and they take it and grow from it in their way. So instead of aiming to draw like me, they aim to sort of develop their own skill. But okay, yeah, good luck. Have fun taking care of the kids. Thanks for watching and subbing and commenting. all that good stuff. Anyway, so yeah, I'll probably sometime in the future or the near future, do a real tutorial like this or on drawing large cracks. Feel like I've got a pretty good handle on it. Now it's more of just a matter of focusing in. Yeah, if you want little extra details, just kind of have this little bend like that show up. There we go. You know, I have these big cracks coming off, but just little ones, especially if I had drawn this a little bigger, that show that change in the earth here. Change in the direction, I should say. But it depends on what level of detail you're going for, I suppose. Not too shabby, a little rough, but. Okay, now, since people are still around, unless somebody has questions on this, I'm probably going to switch to my Mount Rainier drawing. And when I say probably, I mean definitely. So this is the one I've been drawing on a lot. I've talked through this tree drawing process quite a few times. Just one last question. What motivated you to come so far? Is it something you want to do with your whole life? Yeah, I mean, I think I just like making art, and I mean, I like painting and drawing with ink and making videos. And the thing that just took off on YouTube was my first drawing tutorial. So I've just been leaning into that. But also, I've always been like a big details guy. And so like, on no matter what medium I'm using, I always get sort of hyper-focused on details. So that just sort of motivates me. But like my work as an editor on TV shows, it's also super detail-oriented. So it just kind of all, you know, it all sort of leans into things that I'm interested in. But yeah, for drawing is just the first thing that sort of popped off on YouTube. Erik was a wee babe when he started. I found some old drawings from like elementary school of shoes. Okay, we'll start with this one down here, see where that's at. I've got to just find my spot here though. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. Let me see. I'm just trying to find my spot here. This drawing I've been spending a lot of time on, so I want to make sure I don't mess it up. I've explained this tree drawing process quite a bit. Just a layering of HB, 2B, 4H, somewhere between a 4H and a 2B, and I start with the lightest, go to the darkest. Bear with me for 1 second as I find my spot here. These trees, I'm not hyper about getting exact, but I want to make sure I'm just in the right ballpark so I can keep things in order. These are all little 1x1 inch squares, and I try to do like a square a day, or not a square a day, but a square a session. I've been working on this for like a year, but again, the last like 7 months now have been my tutorial videos, so it moves slow. Okay. I also have the same reference image up on my computer, just to make sure I keep in the ballpark. So you can see I've done my first 2 layers here. And now I'm just going back to fill in the shadows and really form those trees with my 2B pencil. Just doing little dots, little dabs. Even though this is like the deeper shadows, varying the texture even on like a really small level with doing little dots, having a little darker and slightly lighter spots you might not even really notice, still builds that texture of all these evergreen trees. So that's what I'm going for. That's what I can zoom in a little bit. There we go. But in this process on drawing these trees, the layering in of the shadows, which is the final step, is really when the trees start to take shape. So that's when you can really give them the definition with contrast and create that texture. Up here, this tree starts to reveal itself a little bit more. Down here, these two trees are creating some darker shadows. So up here, making a little fewer dark spots, lifting my pencil up even more, even though I might not be able to tell. Just being a little more, or a little less thorough than I am down here. I don't think I actually showed this full drawing, did I? I can't remember. So, oh, we can't zoom, there we go. So here's where I'm working. Here's the full thing. All right, let's get back to it. This side is really dark and deep shadow, but again, in real life, you would see these trees, but there's trees behind here tucked in. You would see a little bit of definition, and just having little variations in your pressure, slightly different values, you're going to get that look of a tree sort of hiding back there. Just make sure you pick up your pencil and you don't just, fill it in. But for those that were here when I was drawing the large crack in the ground, that was an example of figuring out the process. Here I'm kind of just on autopilot because I've done this so many times. And all these tiny little, every single little part of this process I've done so much, I can just sort of let my pencil flow. Some of these shadows, of course, go into these trees. Probably do that in the final step. Just want to make sure I don't, go over and erase all the work I've done on these. But you can see down here, it's pretty dark, and then I'm slowly getting lighter again as this tree kind of emerges out from behind this tree. And I'm working off a reference image here of a photo I took at Mount Rainier, which if you're trying to draw realistically, I would highly recommend using a reference image, even if it's like several to combine into one, because you're just going to get a level of realism, or see a level of realism that it's going to be hard to imagine and get to otherwise. Okay, let's give this tree a little bit of shadows. Of course, down the center of this tree. Why the different camera views today? And why the different camera views today? And of the camera showing a wide angle, you have a nice sliced view, looks like. I don't know. I just hook up the camera where I can. It changed. I'm moving the tripod all the time, Doug. So it's more that it's just never in the same place. Because this is also where I record the tutorials, so I always have to adjust it, especially if I'm trying to get different angles. Because I have 2 lights around me as well. So it just happened to move. Are you not able? Can you not see? I mean, you can still see pretty well. It looks like, but. Is the other camera angle better on the other ones, Doug? So here I'm going into this tree. Again, these are like little branches here. So the bottom of the branches are going to be a little darker going into this tree. And then, of course, this inside part where all the branches are coming out from the trunk, there's going to be a little bit more shadows. But I really just want to keep it random. You can see I'm really bouncing around. I just don't want to let my pencil stay on the paper too long because it's going to kind of turn it really muddy. No, it's like one of those reels. Everything is fine, just curious. Oh, you mean the vertical? The lives, the comments for me show up vertically, Doug, so I keep it this way so I can read them easier. I know some, you can have it where you can play it horizontally. And at some point I'm going to look into that, but right now I just kind of set these up as quickly and efficiently as possible, so I just do it vertically. But yeah, horizontally would be better, especially with this, so you could see the whole drawing. But I think for I would need my other computer down here, which I don't want to have to move back and forth. Just tidying this up. This will go into this square a little bit, but I just like to sort of keep it nice and segmented so when I get over here I can continue that on. And if you do get a little too dark, like right here, there's a little branch. Again, I have this Faber-Castell eraser. I've mentioned this a bunch of times, but I like this eraser because it actually doesn't erase that well, so I can just take off this top layer by little dabs and then just finesse that. If you want, you know, can't remember if I put it in the link of or the description of this video or other videos. All my tools are listed. You can get them over at Blix. I'm an affiliate, Blix affiliate. I do get a small commission if you buy anything off of my list, which goes back to support this channel. But all my tools are there, or, you know, again, these are the erasers I showed. It's a Factus BM2 eraser, this little Faber-Castell, but this is my favorite bread and butter electric eraser I use in so many of my tutorials. But anyways, you can check it. If you don't see in the link or in the description of this video, check my other videos. It sounds like everyone, my Blix affiliate link. But again, I do make a little bit of money, which I greatly appreciate. But yeah, I think that's a good spot to end instead of starting a new one, because I accidentally turned my phone off there for a second. I'm not sure if I'm still live right now. There we go. Sorry, I hit the power off button. I thought I turned it off. But rather than starting a new square here, I think that's just a good place to end. So there's what I was working on. Let's see if I can hold it steady. And again, so this is my reference image. This is the spot I just did. It's not 100%, but again, for the trees, I don't really care. I just want to be in the ballpark. And the mountain is where I want to get all these things super accurate. But yeah, I think I'll call that because it's been about an hour. But if anybody ever has any tutorial suggestions that they want help with, feel free to drop it in the comments here or send me a message in some other way. But other than that, thanks for watching, and see you on the next live. Hope everybody has a good weekend.